Send me the border bill now. Obviously, it's not reached his desk just yet. What do you think, Congressman? What do you think about this border bill passing? Is there any possibility?
We need to pass it. When you think about the border and the way the Republicans have approached it, you can have the fix, which President Biden is asking for, or you can have the fiction, which is to have the issue and to stoke grievances and to pander to fear, but do nothing at all. What was remarkable is that this bill that the president's referring to was written by the second most conservative member of the Senate, Senator James Lankford, and he worked with the president to surge resources to the border to expedite the processing of asylum claims, and so that we can move on to other immigration issues as well, like a workforce crisis when it comes to labor. So you can have an earned citizenship. You can take care of the dreamers who came here by no fault of their own. Much more we need to do on immigration, but you need to secure the border first. And President Biden showed that he wants to govern and get something done. And I think the Republicans showed that if Donald Trump says don't do it, well, then we'll just keep the issue and let the solution hang out there.
I do want to ask you about President Biden using the word illegals during his address. That's typically a word used by Republicans. Your thoughts there, Congressman?
Yeah, I say undocumented, new Americans, but that wasn't, the point of what President Biden was trying to make. The point he was trying to make was that if you consider this individual illegal and you have an issue with, what's going on at the border, then join him in bringing a solution. And of course, by the way, that young woman's death in Georgia is awful. And we must do everything we can to make sure, as we have an immigration process, a legal immigration process, that we know who's coming in to our country. And I think that's why the president invites Republicans to work with him to do that.
Why do you think Republicans are still holding up this bill?
Donald Trump told them to.
And they fell in line that easily.
Donald Trump proudly has said he killed the bill. And if you step back and think about, well, why does Donald Trump tell them to kill the bill? Well, it's because Donald Trump is running for president, in part to make 91 felony charges go away and to escape accountability. And the issue that he has known this whole campaign, the refrain that he repeats is noun, verb, border. So he hammers home the border issue, and then he sees that Republicans are working with the president to solve the border issue, and he sees his own presidency and his candidacy evaporating if that issue is taken away. And so he tells them plainly to kill it, and because Republicans are by and large afraid of Donald Trump coming after them, they just kill it. And that's sad, because our job is to get things done and to solve a crisis when it's in front of you, not to put a person's political benefit in front of that.
Sir, you were at the State of the Union address. We saw President Biden. How does he keep his momentum, that energy to, go forward into this election season, of course, going into November?
Yeah, President Biden brought the heat to that State of the Union. And if you had listened to Donald Trump or my Republican colleagues, you would have been surprised he even, could have walked up to the podium and delivered, 3 coherent words from, the way they falsely described President Biden. And he framed it as a freedom agenda. And that's in contrast to what you've heard from presidents in the past. And that's because freedom in so many ways is on the line. And so it's your financial freedom to have breathing room in your personal finances, freedom of your body, to make a decision about an abortion, freedom to breathe clean air, freedom to read and choose the books that go in your own library, freedom from gun violence, freedom to vote and have it counted. And if you're a gay or lesbian couple in America, the freedom to marry. All of those freedoms are under attack, and he framed it that way, and he framed it as he will protect those freedoms, and he is running against somebody who would take a wrecking ball to them.
We've heard repeatedly that President Biden has a messaging problem. While he's on the campaign trail now, is there something you think he should do that he maybe hasn't done already to get that message across to his voters?
Yeah, to speak plainly about what's at stake here and speak to the gut. This is a gut check election. And we can tick off, the economic numbers, and he's been more consequential on the economy than any president. We can tick off the legislative achievements that he's had, and he's been more consequential in his first term than any other president. But this is really a gut check, and make sure Americans understand what the consequence is of getting it wrong and putting your freedoms in the hands of Donald Trump. And Joe Biden will pass that gut check.
Biden's campaign just released what's described as the first campaign ad. Let's watch a few seconds. We actually don't have it. But what do you think, as he's going to the campaign trail, that he needs his voters to know, especially in those battleground states like Georgia, where he is today?
President Biden needs to convey, to his voters, of course, what he has done, and that is playing out in the jobs created, through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, but also what he will protect. And if you look at, the IVF ban in Alabama, for example, Donald Trump appointed judges who believe that life begins at conception. And that is the same legal theory that allowed that Alabama ban to be put in place. And so you will see an abortion ban nationwide. You will see this crazy idea that life begins at conception play out across the country, and that will affect, you and your family. And so it's a war on families. It's a war on freedom. And President Biden just needs to hammer that home every day.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.